versus you. It's you 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 versus you. Time to clear your mental, everything you've been through. Looking in the mirror like you're the one with the issues. You against yourself, feel like you against the world. Internally battling all of the trauma you struggle.
Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm Saquon, and I'd like to welcome you all back to the You versus You podcast. And it's been a couple of months, and this is a very special edition of the You versus You podcast. This is actually the roundtable edition, and this is the first episode where we actually feature a guest. And this brother is a really, really, really good brother, good friend of mine. I'm really fortunate to meet him. But prior to us getting into that, those of you that have followed the podcast for a while now, you understand that basically it's a documentation of my mental health journey. I documented everything from the moment of crisis up until my real-time point now. And the last episode, we sort of talked about what the gradual surrender was like, which is a perfect segue into where we are now. Shortly after that, I wanted to pursue something that I had been interested in for quite some time now, something that I was reluctant to pursue because I was in my own way. My inner monologue was talking, I was afraid, but thankfully I was able to shed that fear, get out of my own way, and pursue this interest. In addition to that, part of me pursuing this interest or wanting to pursue this interest is because I wanted to relearn how to learn. Everything that I had been learning up until this point has been sort of associated with money or some type of hustle to get ahead. And while that's great because you have to do something to slice bread in life, I wanted something that brought me joy. And that sort of brought me to my introduction to salsa lessons. And I came to the Clave studio and I had an opportunity to interact with this brother and meet him. And it's been all joy ever since. So with that being said, I'm very, very happy to introduce my brother Imarlos. Thank you very much for stopping by, man. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. You bet, man. So Cuban salsa, man, the Clave studio. Tell me a little bit about your background.
Well, my background is totally separate from the experience that you're having. I grew up on a farm, Albany, Georgia. That's it. That's most of my life. Moved to the city of Albany, Georgia. Actually, Leesburg, then to the city of Albany, and then moved up here around 12, 13. So, school, no dancing, no Latin. Didn't even understand the music when I walked in. So I don't know if you had that same experience. You may have heard. I heard some Cuban song a little bit before I walked in, but I never associated the two. So started it, I think, in 2024. Just out, was about to get married, did not go through. And after that, didn't have much to do. So ended up going to Havana, Tongue and Groove. And then it just opened my eyes to a different world. So started teaching, and then I opened up my own studio in 2012.
Gotcha. That is awesome, man. Yeah, you mentioned you didn't know whether or not if I had any type of introduction. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I would call, maybe it's a slight introduction. I would hear the music. I would go to, in the city on Piedmont Road, that little club there. Was it Havana Nights or something like that? Mm-hmm. I went once or twice. I saw the music, or I heard the music. I saw the interaction, and I was always smitten with it. And like I said, I always wanted to try it, man. And just being in your studio, in your class, like your level of expertise, your level of knowledge, but most importantly, the energy that I feel in there, man. It's just amazing. How did you cultivate that type of environment? Or is that organically done through the music and the dance itself?
Well, Cuban music to me, I think Latin music is that it has that energy built in, but Cuban music to me is more of a party music. We listen to something called timba, and developed in the 1980s in Cuba, but we didn't get it in America because the embargo. So you had to get the music from either Europe or bring it back directly from Cuba. So it's party. Like if you ever go, hopefully you'll be able to join us one time. Concerts all the time. So that's the energy. I went there, and you even see the bar. Some of the setups I have at Clavi is a place called Clavi y Son in Cuba. They had a bar. They had people just hanging out. They had a nice little lounge area. You can go upstairs after they learn. People just intermingling, and I just wanted to bring that back here.
Gotcha.
So yeah, so that's why I kind of got the feel. I went there, and then I came back and I said I want my own place.
Gotcha. That's
Yeah.
amazing, man.
Yeah.
And you and I had this conversation, I think, about maybe 3 weeks ago. And I was telling you one of the other reasons why I gravitated toward this pursuit is because, in addition to seeing the dance, I've always been fascinated with the strong familial bonds within the Cuban or the Hispanic culture
Mm-hmm.
in general. The clear defining of roles that you can see in the dance. And I just feel like all of that correlates very strongly. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Definitely. At least it does for myself. I learned a lot, especially getting into the dance, about different roles, how those roles, and communicating that with a partner, and also life and management. So even with the dance, you have to have a certain skill level before you start to take on a leadership role. It's just not handed to you. So you have to practice, and whatever you want to lead in, you have to be practiced, and you have to be good at what you know. So when I started, I didn't know any. I came from hip hop, R&B and hip hop, two-step, breakdancing when I was small, and so to hear the music, I couldn't get it at all. Like I was explaining to some friends you brought. That's why I like to teach the beginner class, because I remember how it was when I started. I could not get it was all off. I remember the two-step, but that cadence of So I really had to put a lot of effort in to actually learn it. And when I got the basic of it, and this is where it all clicked in, I got the basic at home. I could do the basic, but soon as I touched the lady's hand, it was gone.
Right.
Yeah, it was all gone. Especially, she'll look, she'll smile, and I just have to let go. So I found out at that point, I have to be solid in my foundation before I could take the lead.
That's actually a perfect segue, because when I first came into the class, like you said, you teach the beginner class. I was there. I didn't know what to expect, but it made perfect sense. Listen, we got to get this footwork down, Pat, because you have to have a solid foundation. Without that, you can't go anywhere. So immediately in my mind, with my mental health background, or experience rather, I immediately correlated that to familiar bonds, whether they're strong or weak, particularly within our communities. As a microcosm with my own personal experience, because I failed in many relationships, most recently my marriage. But I can point that back to a lack of emphasis on a solid foundation.
Yes.
Right? So learning that foundation and then being able to correlate that, to be quite honest, the first couple of classes, that was kind of triggering for me. I've been teetering on the full-on acceptance of the fact that that foundation was improper, which led to that subsequent divorce. But I learned how to accept that, if it makes sense, through the beauty of learning this dance.
I wonder, so what is there a piece that clicked for you?
Yes.
That one particular piece that clicked, that correlates?
It was two, actually.
Oh, okay.
It was the foundation and learning the steps like I just explained, and then also your second exercise that you have us doing, the mirroring.
Oh,
right, which is very important. Obviously in the dance, because how you say, you have to have a firm balance between intention and understanding where you're going, right? But it's a firm intention, but it's also a delicate intention.
yes.
Right? But when like how you explained, when you're unclear with your intention, it sends so many mixed signals to your partner. And how you're explaining to the female to really pay attention to your lead with your shoulders. From a familial standpoint, I have to have a firm intention. I have to have a firm direction and understand how I view life, my stance on it, my stance on who I am within that life, what I am presently, what I wish to become, and to effectively convey that to a partner with the hopes of establishing a solid familial foundation. So that's sort of what I got from that. Do you see any correlation in that?
No, it's major to me. I think I tell whether couples come, managers. I mean, I think team or relationship wise, I think it's there's a major correlation because it's, for instance, you can practice. And I'm gonna use dance, and then we can use it another analogy if
Absolutely.
needed. But in dance, like I said, I was practicing. I got all the moves. But I think even in relationship and even leading a team, like I'm in IT, I have a team or whatsoever. I think as a leader, you might think somebody's coming in with a blank slate like this napkin,
Right.
and all of your training just get applied to it. No, they come with texture or a vibe or a feel. Like when you're dancing with a partner, and that's what it was. She had her own vibe. She had her own feel. So how would I lead to get to, and like the intention part, I want to move to A, B, and C. I still need to be able to do that, but to incorporate my partner. And I have to understand, for instance, when I do moves, I not only have to be confident in what I'm leading myself on, I try to pay attention to where her body is, her body language, where she steps, or wherever my partner is, to get to A, to B, and then C. But I do have to understand that. If she comes and she's like, well, go this way, or whatever the partner is, so it's whomever's leading. We call lead, follow. And I'm going A, B, C, and then we decide to have someone say, oh, no, we're going to go to C. That starts to create friction. I didn't fully understand. And they're going somewhere outside of the path. And I realized that I think when it came to, we used to have this debate with one of my trainers in Cuba. I said I could probably solve any relationship problem through dance.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you can't. And we used to go back and forth. And then she said, huh. And then we'll keep going back because she was well trained in the Cuban dance. And so I used to like to use that as a correlation. Like if you do that, you have to understand. And if you try to change something without communicating with your partner, and if you expect that partner to lead, there's a problem. No matter who it is, no matter what section what portion of the dance it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, like that correlates to, because we're black men, women of color, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're black men that have a sense of self. We're black men that, lead in different capacities. But I feel like we're both mindful of what occurs in our community.
Yeah.
And when you look at the breakdown of our families, when you look at the breakdown in relationships, right? I think that those are two major issues, whether it's the lack of communication and the lack of willing and effective leadership. So I agree with you, solving those problems through dance, because I'm able to see that. As an example, one of my earlier classes, there was a young lady in there, and we were doing the Exivola, which is a turn, which Marlos may explain at some point. But we were doing the Exivola, and how you explain that, like you should use your thumb and just you're showing your lady off as she turns.
Mm-hmm.
But she would just completely grip my hand, right? And she would, and I guess in a sense, back lead me, or want to control that. And immediately I'm thinking, okay, there may be a trust issue here. But
Oh, no. Sometimes it's a trust issue, and sometimes it's just processing. For instance, Courtney and the ladies that lead, they understand. This is a big thing when it came to that, to correlate leading in a relationship. Leading is thinking ahead, and then when you're thinking ahead versus just responding, it's almost like a side seat driver. You're doing all these things, maps. It has to be in sync. And so when she does that, she just hear a response. I know how to do that, and I just do it. And let me see, how can I explain it? It may not be trust, but it's the follower does not have to think ahead and provide a protection level or to keep in sync. They just can execute without, like a side seat driver. And I think that is what's happening in dance. And I think it happens in relationships as well. Because if you have a big picture of where you're going, there's little small things that I don't like. I have a contract at work. I don't know everything. They don't include me in every single thing that they had in the meeting. They just give me the direction they want to go. And I'm a contractor, so I have to try to meet that goal. And so when she just turns, she knows it.
Right.
She has the tempo. And sometimes the guys are slower with the melody and also the cadence. And so we're thinking about cadence. I have to do this, but she already knows what the move is, so she doesn't really have to wait for you to make the turn.
Gotcha.
So some is trust. The trust issue is when you start dancing later and it comes into a dip or something else, and they don't trust the lead because it's a safety thing.
Right.
That particular move, I think I know it, so I can do it without waiting for my leader to execute it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think that's a perfect segue. So it may not be a trust issue, and I certainly defer to your expertise, and I agree with that. When she knows the move,
Mm-hmm.
is there a point where the woman is acquiescing to the man's lead for the purpose of creating something beautiful in this dance, or the beauty of symbiosis?
Say that again.
So like I feel like the dance is okay. So we were at the social last
Mhm.
Friday, right? And I watched you dance, and you're very great. And I watched all the other guys dance, and they just got it, and they were able to take ladies with very little experience, right?
Mhm.
And do all of these moves. I saw the smiles on their faces. I saw what I felt was a relinquishing of trust and a deferment to their leads, right? And I felt like it was an establishment of roles
Mhm.
to where I'm acquiescing to a lead, but it's not like as a woman I'm knowing my role or knowing my place, or maybe it is that, but I'm doing that not to submit to you, but to create something beautiful. Like I know what this dance has the potential to be in terms of beauty, and if I acquiesce to that,
Mhm.
then we can create something beautiful together.
Yes. So, and when you asked that the first time, it was something that you mentioned. I don't know if you remember when you asked it the first time. Yeah, I agree when you was out. So to explain that, to me, that's a different vision of it. Like the guys you may have been watching, myself, Rod, Kevin, we already have that foundation, and you'll be the same as well. There's a confidence level that even if they want to turn, we can stop because we know what move that is about to come. But
Right.
that comes from the lead, even if they're beginners. And so and I know if you see like Courtney, they veer off a little bit because they have their own expression.
Right.
But they still is going by the path. Like I said, we provide the road and they have all their different expressions. So yes, to what you're saying, yes, what we say, maybe it's not the best word sometimes, to submit, to let go, to go into that form that I'm creating for the lady. And if she does that and connect with me, and if I connect with the music, that is something that's beautiful. And definitely, yes, they have to release versus, oh, I know this move, but I'm going to go with my leader to make the two look nice.
Right.
Yes. So I can tell by watching if she does her own thing and he's doing his a little bit. I can watch. When I'm looking at them dance, I can tell. We call it backleading. That's what we call it. It's backleading. Like side seat driving, the same thing is with backleading. And so, yeah, it does take that, but it also takes, when we're in private lessons, she says she has a problem with that, and because I think she's in management and she controls her own life. I said, like, yeah, it's just a dance. And since you've said yes to me, let's dance. Don't think about doing the moves. Just flow with me. And then we start to dance and she messes up less. Why? Because we're not fighting.
Exactly.
We're not fighting with each other. And it creates a certain level of harmony. And that's the reason why she comes to class, is so she can relax a little bit and then trust in the lead. The problem is if they catch on and the guy is maybe here or even, that becomes a issue.
Gotcha.
It becomes a real problem because she know where the turn. I'm supposed to be back at this time. So it's a humbling. She has to be very humble or gracious to be able to make that look pretty,
Gotcha.
even though I'm messing up. Because my trainer, she's Corellia, she's very good at that, making movements that I'm doing, that I'm learning, to adjust to that since I'm leading and giving grace to make it look good aesthetically. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So in terms of relationships, how, because you said you can look at the dance and you can kind of tell
Mm-hmm.
and fix a certain relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
Did I understand that correctly?
Depending on if or either he or she, if they're having a problem
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship, I like to associate it with dance and see if I can figure out what the problem is.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So how do we get to the space of letting go and deferring, to one another for the purpose of creating something beautiful?
How do you get to that space?
Yeah.
Well, I think there's an overall form of leadership. For instance, in Cuba, it's a little different than here. In Cuba, maybe other Latin cultures are changing to be more so like the United States. But in Cuba, I have no problem with it. Like if we go out, she speaks Spanish. And if we're going somewhere, she speaks Spanish. And then when it comes to negotiating the money, she was like, oh, it's going to be, and he will stop and look, and he'll look at me. And she said, and so I was like, no, she's speaking Spanish. He will not engage. He's like, what? And then he's like, what do you, in Cuba also, they would greet me first. How you doing? It's okay, may I? And dance with the lady. So it's a big culture change. So, but that is incorporated with their dance too. It's in their dance as well. So it's a, like I said, the person I used to train with, very good at most of the stuff, can even fix stuff around the house. But when it comes to socially, and I can see certain things, I can tell if they're not from there in Cuba. Like if I look at a dance, it's like, well, she's kind of leading that. If I'm out and if we're at like a tourist spot, I can tell by the movement of the lady. Like if they're talking, she'll go and she'll grab and she'll put his drink there. If I am amongst some other Cubans, that just wouldn't happen. It wouldn't work that way. So when it comes to relationship, I think the fighting, at least it's turned out that way to me. It's like, well, it's a lot of stuff I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
but we have to, I think, as men having that relationship. Well, I don't even know if it's just what you're comfortable in. I just don't know if ladies like to really lead, if they want to lead, and if she's going to be the leader, and because if I follow Courtney dancing and I take on the following role, I have to go by what she says. I have to follow the movements and what she's trying to do. If I try to do it on my own, we always break hands, something happens. So if you don't want to go by man, female, it is leader. That 50-50 thing doesn't work in salsa. It just doesn't work, because when does the 50 come in?
Right.
It's 100% your role, that type deal. And that's why the ladies choose certain dancers to dance with, because a good dancer, like if you've seen Rod, he gives her plenty of space to be able to dance, but he's still painting the room with art. Someone's learning, always holding on, and she's restricted and can't do much. A good leader in dance can do all these things and give freedom. Relationship, I think, is the same way. This is how I explain it too, and they kind of got mad at me. I say, well, as I see it is, if I say I'm going to Chicago, we're going to Chicago. If you're with me, can we stop off somewhere? Can we do this here? Can we listen to certain types of music? Hey, I want to change this music. Oh, well, if that's better for you, we're going to Chicago. But the problem happens when you say, well, I'm thinking about LA right now. That's when I have to let you off to the next bus stop, because we're going to Chicago.
Right.
Yeah. So when I hear a certain song, you have to have it in your head of what is going on, and then give that adjustment in the relationship. And you have to know if they're off time, you have to kind of know to adjust.
Right.
But you still have to, if it's in a relationship, you're still going to Chicago. We're driving to Chicago. We can add all the little things to make it enjoyable. It is not like, well, this is how we're going. Only going to listen to this. We're only going to do this. Blah, blah, blah. No. Dance have to be open. Dance with Courtney. Courtney hears certain things I don't hear. And so I try to pick up on what she's doing and how she's moving. And other dancers. But the floor, the map, I said that.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So and you said that earlier, like you set the map when I mentioned that we were at the social and I was watching all of the strong male dancers dance. Mm-hmm. And then you said, and I'll get there eventually as well. And I wanted to touch on that, because to me, that feels like a big homie element, right? Mm-hmm. Which is something that's missing. Like, listen, I have something that you don't, but you need, mm-hmm. right? But can you fall back? Can you listen? Can you take instruction from someone that's here, mm-hmm. right? Can you humble out, essentially? Because I feel like that's an aspect that's missing in our community as well, right?
You mean male, female?
Or male.
Male. Okay.
Right. For the purposes of becoming an effective lead.
Yes. I find, a lot of friends I grew up with and in the community, and it's a little different from Latin guy. They how should I say? I'll let you finish that. I think I know where you're going, but it's big in our community. When you say big homie or whatsoever, or homie, certain advice works well with men in our community until a woman is incorporated. Mm. Yeah. So then it changes. So it changes a lot. So if it's outside of that, if ladies are not there, it doesn't happen that much around Latin men. We're talking to them.
That's very interesting.
Yeah. I just had a conversation when you left. We was having, when you left, there was a Latin guy on there, and then it was like, you sound just like him. But no, I kind of sound like he talked to his friends this way. You know what I mean? But when I am talking to a lot of my older friends or some newer guys, it changes up. when a lady is involved and they nervous to say things around our ladies or whatsoever. And the guy that was there and several other ones, there's like this is normal. This is just what we like. This is what we don't like. This is what I would want to do. But it comes with, and they're like the romance is high. You know, a lot of the times Latin men are very romantic, but it's just done in a different. It's done in a different form. Yeah, or what they call it, machismo, or dear, blah blah blah. They do all that stuff, but the expression of how they express what they like as a man, they have no problems with that. We do sometimes.
Let's
a lot
explore
of times.
that a little bit. So they're okay. They're clear with the expression of how they feel, what they want as a man. And you mentioned that there is
More so.
machismo there, right? But you also mentioned romance, which suggests to me that there's a delicate balance there, right? To where, right, like explain that to me a bit, because and the reason why I want you to do that is because I feel that way. Like I mentioned all the way back in the beginning. One of the reasons why I came to dance is because, and I can admit this, I have no problem with it. I feel like my interactions with women need to improve, right? I have trauma that goes all the way back with my mother, which has since been reconciled. My mental health journey has been going on for the better part of 2 years now, therapy and the like. But yeah, I feel like I was a little bit rough around the edges. There were times where the women in my life would mirror my mom in interactions that I may or may not have had with her. So the delicate balance between the romance and the healthy expression of masculinity was always an issue with me.
Let me ask, is it a
Yes, sir.
controlling dynamic type deal or no?
That's a very good question. For me, it was an issue of self-worth. So, but it was always self-imposed, right? But it seemed as if the external thing was challenging it. So it seemed like in my mind, my girlfriend was challenging this, when no, it was just accountability. Or my ex-wife would have challenged a certain thing. And I view this as, okay, yo, you're exposing me. No, it's just accountability, right? And that wound would take me all the way back to that source, right? And that response from that would be explosive, not in a physical violence type of way, right? But in an unhealthy expression. But I say all of that to say, because through my mental health journey for 2 years and then getting to the point to where I'm coming to class, my interactions with people have changed tremendously. Just from, like, my dancing still sucks, right? I'm not there yet. But I feel so happy. I feel elevated emotions when I'm there. I understand the concept of what I need to be in terms of learning how to be a good lead. I understand the balance of firm intention, but also balancing and letting my partner live in her femininity. You understand what I'm saying? So when I'm at work, my conversations with women are different. When I'm not at work, whenever I'm interacting, it's just very different. It's always more complimentary now. I'm more present. I exercise empathy more. So I think that what I'm experiencing in this class is bringing that out even more, in addition to my journey.
Okay. And so you were saying something about your relationships. You said, I asked you, was it challenging or combating or controlling whatsoever? What was your initial question to that? Because it made me ask you, was it a controlling thing? So I wanted to go back to
when I was mentioning that my issues with women took me back to the experience that I had with my mother.
And you said accountability.
Accountability.
Oh, okay. I had a lot of challenges myself until I stepped out into I would never say I'm a relationship guru because I was supposed to get married. It didn't go through, blah, blah, blah. But a lot of my relationships afterwards, I did change something. I was always on the balance. I was a type of person that I was independent. I did not, for its accountability, I did not have to worry about accountability because I've always had to take care of home. I am the oldest in my family, so a lot of times they call me first when it comes to family gatherings and stuff like that. And I had kids I had to take, they didn't live with me. Well, my oldest did for a little bit, but other than that, accountability, I think I was fine on. My thing was this thing that goes in our community about 50-50. Right. And I am a person that, I got my stuff, my stuff I think is together and I think it's set, and I'm fine. But then I'm sharing that space and it was a thing, and I'm going to hit it quickly and I'll try to jump off of it. It was 50-50 until my life was 50-50. Hers was mostly her life, except for the things I benefited. Then it hit 50-50. It wasn't 50-50 when it came to dinner, for instance. Dinner was not 50-50, or going out was not 50-50. It was just things I ran in my life. And I cut all that out, especially when I got into dance. It was, and it was more so in the community. I think in our community, men, I understand I don't worship anyone, but I think in our community, they worship women. They worship women. And I don't worship anyone, man or woman necessarily, or things, or I do my best try not to worship anything. Stuff come and go. And then when I cut that out, it caused a lot of friction. I don't know if you run into that. That's why I asked, was it a controlling thing? Because even now at my studio, I don't tolerate certain things. This is not the place for you. You might need to go somewhere else. I like to bring some of the elements I had when I found in Cuba, some even got offended. It was like, well, if the men open doors, maybe you can pour some tea. Oh, I'm not pouring no tea. Well, and I'm just breaking it down closely to you. Well, this might not be the place for you because it won't be just no one directional thing. Because all of the guys there are very respectful. If you need someone to walk you to your car, open the door, pick up something, those old-fashioned things, like for instance, you go to Cuba, you drive in an old 57 Chevy, you go back in time. And when you eliminate that, in my opinion, you're going to go through some challenges.
Absolutely.
But, a lot of challenges. But in this particular circle, I think it would work out a lot better when it comes to accountability. That's why I asked what's controlling. One thing, short story is, for instance, I don't know if you had something like this. I do stuff wrong, but in how you address certain things. Certain women think, oh, well, I think you should be able to take care of this. Versus, I think you should care of it. I'm going to do it, and then I'm going to put you down for not taking care of it. So I don't know if that is an accountability thing I used to run into, and I'm like, that's got to stop.
I've experienced that in certain relationships. I didn't experience that much in my marriage, to be perfectly honest with you. My issues were, and being quite honest, were lack of setting a clear direction and lack of clear intention.
That was your part.
Those were my issues.
Yeah, mine as well. Yeah. Definitely mine, because if you're unsure, why would your kids or anyone else that you're over, or even in a business arrangement, any type of arrangement, if I'm leading it, if you're unsure, why do you expect them to be sure in you? That type deal.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it didn't have anything, well, there were certain aspects that it had to do with my partner, but the crux of everything was all internal unresolved mechanisms that I learned how to deal with through tools in my toolbox learned through my mental health journey.
What would be one of the cruxes? What would be one thing that just, like I say, when I'm watching a dance and you split and you break, what was one of those items in general?
Thoughts and control. So when I first found my therapist, the first conversation that we had was the establishment of what thoughts and control was. Thoughts in terms of what my inner monologue says to me and my negative self-talk. And my negative self-talk was actually very toxic. But the control mechanism was important because I had to learn how to establish what I have control over versus what I don't have control over. And then tie responsibility and accountability to each of those things. So if I have control over a thing, then it's 100% my responsibility to be responsible for it and be held accountable. If it isn't, then I can't be responsible and held accountable, because a lot of my issues with self-worth made me a people pleaser, right? So people that I had interpersonal relationships with, I would think it was my responsibility to make them happy, even at the expense of my own happiness, right? Because without the establishment of self-worth, there was no healthy boundaries to reinforce. I didn't even have the concept of that, right? So there was a lot of baggage that I was walking around with that really I had no business walking around with. It was never my responsibility to begin with.
Yeah, I got to the point of saying, I don't know if this if it doesn't answer to me or go through guidance, I plan on having a good night's sleep.
I like that.
Yeah, I don't. My daughter loves to be super independent. That's fine. I mean, I help where I can, but I say, well, I'm not a believer in debt. Hey, you shouldn't get debt. Well, what? You do a lot of excuses, but they've taken, well, at least in my family, they've taken certain things. I'm still financially responsible and I need to worry about it. I need to do all of this other stuff, but you're independent. Doesn't work. I have my contract. Anything outside the scope of work.
I know where you're going.
Anything outside the scope of work. I don't plan on staying up all night.
Right.
This is my advice or whatsoever you need, such and such. Well, that's fine. And I'm not responsible.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's what you mean about control, but I know it was, well, don't tell me what to do. Just make sure it's paid for. And I don't do any of that. Nope. I have no interest in doing it because I think even if you invest in a stock or a company, you look through certain bios, you make sure it's going in the direction you may want to go before you start paying for something.
Right.
So I'm not just a wallet, that type deal. So
Absolutely.
I don't know if that's what you ran into, but or when it comes to control. And I even had several instances at my studio where they pay no rent, but they think my place should be ran a certain way. I'm open to suggestions, but I don't want to write that check out.
Right.
So, yeah.
That makes perfect sense. So to kind of walk it back a bit, would you say that since you've become a dancer and immersed yourself in this culture, would you say that the quality of your relationships have improved?
Much so.
Much so.
Much more so. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It's because I'm clear about, I don't always go around like, I want this, I want that, I want that. But I try to have a posture of I just know that I don't do that. Or I like this. Or this is how I like things ran here.
Gotcha.
And then the clearer I got on that, the better my relationships got with everyone.
Awesome.
Kids, teammates, lady friends. It just got better. Yeah. And I associate a lot with dance because when I ask a lady to dance, I go out, I try to get all the guys to go ask the lady to dance. Yes. She said yes. So it's just for 5 minutes. Trust me enough within this 5 minutes to see how the dance will go. that type deal. And I do that in relationships, even if it's going out to dinner or if it's, would you allow me to entertain or take you somewhere, or would you let me in your space for company or whatsoever? It's an agreement back and forth. I'm not, you're not forcing someone to dance with you. You're not forcing to spend time with someone. And I think once that connection happened in the dance, you do everything you can to make that experience awesome. In a relationship, friendship, ladies, whatever it is, once you get that time, I treat it like a dance and make it an experience. Like if we go out, I try to move through with the crowd, wherever I'm at, almost like a dance. Like there's music, at a restaurant. I like bars. I don't even sit at the table. I like to sit at the bar and we all kind of communicate and as we're out as an experience.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So much better. I think so. And a lot of stuff is a lot clearer.
Yeah. I can agree with that. Again, I know it's only been a month and a half, but for all the reasons that I mentioned a little while ago,
Mm-hmm.
I feel that the quality of my relationships are improving. And which is a perfect segue to, the last portion of what we're doing here today is, I think another reason for that is the music, the live instrumentation, right?
Mm-hmm.
That feels like it's universally harmonic. So it's real music, not synthetic music. And I feel like it speaks to elevated emotions like joy,
Mm-hmm.
gratitude, things of that nature.
Yes and no.
Okay.
When I get it translated, sometimes I was like, oh, I can't do a performance off that. So yeah. But it's been.
Now, are you talking about the lyrics?
Yes.
I'm gonna talk about that too. Go ahead. Let me let you finish.
No, I'm just saying. It sounded like such a romantic song until they translate it, and I'm just like, I cannot. No, I'm not doing a performance off that. That is not. So yeah, but I love the song. So, and I even grew up that way. A lot of the lyrics, I had no clue some of the lyrics of the music. I know exactly what you're talking about. When you go out, it just looked like everyone is just connecting and together and enjoying and just meshing. Right. Especially when they all like the music. And when you go to, that was a small party we had. That was a small outing. They had something else that day. But when everyone comes out and you come, it's just it's like you explained, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm glad that you mentioned that because I want to be fair. I don't speak Spanish, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I know some of the songs are crazy, right? And but it's ill because, right, I hear the live instrumentation. I hear how the music makes me feel. So I'm not being programmed, right? Because I don't know the lyrics. And I brought that up because I feel those elevated emotions in this music.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk about hip hop and R&B, and I want to be careful with this, not all of it, because there's certainly great hip hop and R&B, right? But most of what we hear on the radio now, it's misogynistic, the synthetic music.
Well, you just said misogynistic. A lot of Latin music is not what you mean, a demeaning? What it depends on what your definition of misogynistic is.
There's
a demeaning form of it, and then there's I am the man, you're the lady. We should interact a certain type of way, and there's certain Latin music you're not going to switch that around.
Right.
So
as opposed
some people call that their versus the bees and
fuck me like a porn star.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
I don't know what that is. I don't. If that's the new name for it, then okay.
So what I'm getting at, right? Because that's exactly what it is. Because I feel a soul in this music. Now, this denigrating music that I'm talking about.
Yes, denigrating.
I don't feel the soul. I feel spirits in that music. I feel lower chakral spirits in that music. And again, I want to be very careful the way I term this because I grew up with like my favorite rappers, Nas, Biggie, like the list goes on and on.
Mhm.
And so I don't want to put it on these young kids and say that it's them because our music had the same effect on
Yes.
our predecessors as well. They thought that it was lewd. They thought that it was inappropriate. The Little Kim poster, all of these different things, right? So again, but like I said, there are certain songs, and if you mine for it, you can find the soul that's still within our music. But it just feels like there's a concentrated effort to spew out a different kind of music that leads to the further dysfunction of our children and our communities as a whole. And I feel like that's why, or one of the reasons why, the quality of relationships within our community are in the state that they're in, and why I see a stark contrast in the Hispanic community, even though some of the lyrics may be a little lewd. What are your thoughts on that?
Since I don't understand a lot of the lyrics, and like I said, I've been caught having it translated, but I do agree with the feel and the vibe of it more so. Like I said, this is what I never told you the story that made me stay into it. I grew up with the same type of music, hip hop music, R&B, and soul. But used to go to 112. You go to different places down here, and
Right.
the night is you're chasing ladies and you're buying drinks. You buy the drinks, you go give it to a friend, she disappears, and it's just a constant night. And you have to come up with all this different type of verbiage, and the guy with the swag kind of, or the cat or the keychain that grabs the lady. So in this environment, this is what made me stay, because I was like right on the borderline. And I started going to Latin parties, and I promise you, she had to be the most beautiful girl there, I think. Right? Yeah. At least that's how I was focused on it. And she came, she said, "Would you like to dance?" And I was, a wall literally was behind me, because that threw me off. I'm like, who are you talking? She said, I was probably at the stages like you are. And I was like, yeah, I'm just learning. She said, "It's fine. We'll get through it." That had never happened at those other spots. It was a certain type of, it just didn't happen. Right. So the music itself, and it's just the community itself. And we danced, and I probably beat her up pretty badly. Maybe stepped on her toes whatsoever. And she still was super sweet.
Right.
Talked to me every time she seen me out. And that just didn't happen. So the two environments, totally different. I even go with friends now. Sometimes once in a while I'll go out. The energy is totally different.
That's a perfect way to describe it, because that's what I encountered on Friday. So I didn't experience anyone being socially awkward. No one was socially awkward. Everyone, the emphasis was have a good time.
Yes.
Men asking women to dance, women asking men to dance. And again, that's a stark contrast with what you see in our community. And I have to correlate that. I'm not saying that that's the sole reason, but what I'm saying is I feel like I can stand firmly on the fact that that's a strong contributing factor to why our community, our interactions with the opposite sex within our communities is that way.
Yes, music, for one. Now, since I grew up with some of the same music, I think you did. What is the saying? Were they expressing themselves of what they seen, or were they creating it by? Did they just come up with pen and paper and start saying these things, and then our community start emulating it, or was it there before and they was writing about it?
That's a good question. I think that, okay, to answer that question, I want to bring up the Drake and Kendrick Lamar beef. I'm a middle-aged man. I can give two shits about the beef. I don't care. Right? They're young kids. They're great. But what's important about it is this, and it ties into what you were just talking about. What if Drake is right? What if the music, what if the company did manipulate the algorithm to support that song in the same way that they may have utilized that in the past to support Drake? If that's true, then what does that mean?
Well, if that is true, that means someone in our community, Jay-Z or Oprah, can just open up a bunch of bookstores and they'll sell out.
True, but it also means that maybe it was a concentrated, systematic effort to
But
pump misogynistic gangster rap.
don't you think it has to be an acceptance though? Like for instance, if you put a liquor store in certain communities, you think everyone will run and buy it if certain values is in that community?
I think epigenetic influences play a major factor, and it's all about learned behaviors. And all a culture is,
Mm-hmm.
when you break a culture down to its most smallest point,
Mm-hmm.
is a group of people in the beginning said, this is the way that we want to do things. And each subsequent generation from that group picked up on those learned behaviors, right? And an epigenetic influence is basically an external influence that influences the gene, right? So, yeah, I think that we're victims of learned behaviors. And it was a systematic design via the liquor stores, via the drugs, via the music, all of these things. And don't get me wrong, this isn't victim talk, but
Well, I think with Drake, the little that I know, I think with Drake, I probably believed him 100%, but I also believe 100% the same company pushed his music the same way.
exactly.
The fact is, when they use that same algorithm to push his music and push theirs, we just like that type of stuff more in the community. So the music company just want to sell records. He, all three of you can be one of my artists. Y'all hate each other and y'all put out something, and if it sells because y'all beating up each other, I'm getting super rich because y'all are doing this. I'm getting super rich.
Right.
So our community not like us more than what Drake puts out.
I can get with that.
When that same you put out the same, I think they did. They put out the same thing on both, and they like the beef.
Have you ever heard a
So-
song on the radio that when you heard it at first, upon first hearing it, it was like, this song freaking sucks. I hate this song, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you heard it 36 times in a day. And then all of a sudden, the next day or the next week, you find yourself repeating this song, right? And then it becomes your jam. And then when you go to the club and then you dance to that song, right? So to me, that's an example of how easily people can be manipulated.
No, I agree with you, but the only reason I said it that way is because you brought up Drake.
Mm-hmm.
The reason is people like beef. You know who manufactured their own beef that I loved and grew up with? Prince and Morris Day.
Yes, they did.
He wrote them both, but
He
he
did.
just made one. He made, "You're gonna be my enemy," but I'm gonna write all the songs. So the reason you brought him up, and I think they used the same thing. Now, I think some powers that be, sure, allow certain music to be pushed on the community and to be played over and over and over. But the difference, and I believe that have some aspects, but I've dated, there were certain ladies I've dated with their parents at home and allowed them to hear it, and you know what? It didn't affect them much. I mean, it just didn't. I've ran into one. I was talking to someone last week, and parents won't allow them to really hear that. And they did it in college, but for some reason they reverted back and don't like it anymore. And it didn't affect their life like that. So I don't know. When I heard Drake was doing that, I thought he was crying because I thought you lost, and now you're gonna find a reason how you got there.
Right.
Is the problem.
Yeah, I agree with that aspect of it. Like, and in that part of it, I can really care less about.
Mhm.
I just thought again that there was a strong correlation with algorithmic pushes and how that can impact an entire group of people.
Like they got rid. No, so if I want to associate it with the music, when it comes to our music, how they got rid of the Eric B's and even Will Smith. and they got rid of all that music and only went with NWA.
That's
And
that's
that,
what that's exactly
that
what
is
I'm
something
referring
different.
to.
Yeah.
That's what I'm
yeah.
referring to. So
Okay.
if Drake is right in this regard, and they did that, then that would give credence all the way back then that the very same thing was done to push this type of music as opposed to positive, uplifting music. And then 20, 30 years
Is his
later,
positive and uplifting?
what's
Is
that?
Drake's? I don't know. I'm
No,
just asking.
well, I really
I
don't
don't
listen
really
to
know.
Drake that much,
Oh, okay.
to be perfectly honest. But I'm talking about the people you mentioned, like
Okay,
the Will
okay, okay,
Smiths,
yeah,
the Eric B, and Rakims, and then push the NWAs. See, that's a conscious choice to do that, right? We're gonna drive this machine consciously,
Okay.
right? And we're gonna benefit from the destruction of a community as a result of it. So again, so I feel as though if it comes out, like I can care less who won the battle. Not
I
like
understand.
not like Us is a dope song, but to be perfectly honest with you, I don't even listen to rap that much anymore anyway.
Nor
I
do
don't care about that. What I care about is, will the algorithmic push be exposed? And if it is exposed, can we draw back from a historical context to the 80s and say, okay, well, because music changed.
And if it's exposed, why is that? I'm wondering why would, how should I say this? Why would we care if it is exposed?
Well, I think it ties into our conversation because I feel a difference in, again, the type of music that I feel elevated emotions from versus the music that I get toxicity from and what that produced in me as a person. And I know that I'm not the only one. I know that I can take myself and I can multiply me by 2 million, 10 million, 15 million. And then I can look at the plight of a community and say that, hey, this may not be the determining driving factor, but this is certainly a contributing factor to the mental health condition and the overall denigrated condition of our community.
Do you think it affected you?
Absolutely.
That music? Oh, okay. The reason why I did listen to that music, but I did have some elders that they didn't explicitly tell me not to. I was around, I think, some good men that talked about order and respect. And that's another thing about dance. And when it comes to relationship, order is a must. And so they instill order in me. It's like, for instance, I haven't had a nice car whatsoever, big sound system, everything, right? But when you go in the neighborhoods, you cut it down, you such and such, you have to do these particular things a certain way.
Right.
You interact with a lady a certain way. So the music was there, but then I hear the music, I was like, oh, I would jam to it. But eventually, like I said, people that had that background would listen to it. It just didn't affect, and it's anecdotal. But
it's certainly anecdotal, my experience as well.
But yeah.
But I love that you say that because it goes all the way back to what you said at the beginning, having that foundation.
Yeah, it's a foundation and it's about order. It's like, my daughter's she's a singer now. She's a music artist and she's dating a guy that he does music videos. And they joke about it because when they come out, one thing her mom and I was universal about, we never listened to that music when she was in the car. We used to listen to India.Arie was one of the main ones, Mariah Carey. She would listen to Sarah Brightman and other stuff. She listened to opera and classical music.
Right.
My daughter would go out with him and it was like, and didn't even know, what is this? And then, they pick on her a little bit, and even with some of those old classic movies, we just didn't watch it with our kid. And we was in sync about that. There was an agreement, and that's something, her music does not reflect any of this modern day music. It reflects what we played around her. So you're right in a certain, her cousins probably did. Matter of fact, cousins did. She heard the music, but she wasn't immersed in it. So it proves to your point, totally. But also, I just think families, no men around, to say, I just think one of the biggest. I don't care what the music is. Somewhat, I just think if the men was around, it wouldn't be as a bigger factor.
Gotcha. Well, you are certainly one of those good men to have around. And I'm definitely happy that I met you, man.
Cool.
I really am.
Yeah,
and on that note, I'm delighted that we had this conversation, man. Would you like to shout the studio out?
Okay. Yes. Right. My Clavi Dance is called Clavi Dance Studio. It's located in Smyrna. We've been there since 2012. We have activities every single week, and also we get together at Ponce and where else? Oh, mostly Ponce right now. Come out, join us, have fun with us, learn how to dance, learn how to lead, follow, and make relationships, connections. All right, thank you.
I can personally attest that what I found at this studio was a lot of love, a lot of uplifting, a lot of elevated emotions. So if you're in the Metro Atlanta area, please do yourself a favor, come by to the studio and get yourself some of this culture because you'll love it. Listen, if you found value here, and it's my sincere hope that you did, then please follow the You versus You podcast on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Comment, like, and subscribe. And keep checking me out. We'll keep busting this thing down. Peace.
Time to clear your mental, everything you've been through. Looking in the mirror like you're the one with the issues. You against yourself, feel like you against the world. Internally battling all of the trauma, you struggle to manage it. Gotta seek help for the damages. It's you versus you, now go and handle it. It's you versus you, let's get ahead of it. It's you versus you, let's clear our heads of it. I'm so good now, I feel good now. The baggage put down, just let me live. Just let me live. Now my mind's clear. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you. It's you versus you.